Wait a minute. Is it true that the eggs are AI generated? Oh hell no! Okay, but seriously, can we not replace creativity with AI?
The hatch, otherwise known as Acon 2025, but I think Roblox doesn't want to confidently call it that, was their latest attempt at trying to bring the magic of Acons back in a way nobody really asked for again, just like Metaverse Champions, which it shares a lot of negative similarities with. Except the hatch was definitely a lot closer than Metaverse Champions could ever dream of being. But what we still got was quite possibly one of the biggest examples of wasted potential I have ever seen that could have easily been a fan favorite if things went differently. And it wouldn't shock me if it was due to the usual suspect of time constraints, that, and probably investors. Also, if there really was any event that could have stopped following this silly naming scheme as all the other hunt likes, it could have been this one, as it's quite different from the rest and was actually trying to do something cool. Could have called it Elemental Extravaganza. A fun callback to the classic egg hunts, but nope, the hatch will do, I guess. But who cares about a name? Let's talk about the event itself, which was, well, it wasn't actually that horrible. Despite what everyone on Twitter will tell you to think, and despite how much I'm about to complain about it in the script. It definitely wasn't great, but better than the hunt, that's for sure. And me personally, I actually like this more than the games. If it weren't for the entire gameplay loop being centered around RNG eggs and having absolutely zero quality control for the games, simply inviting anybody who breathes, this could have been a pretty solid event. Still, not what the people have been asking over half a decade for though, and Roblox themselves is very well aware of that with this weirdly kinda passive-aggressive comment of theirs. But I'm gonna be honest, if this event was designed more to be like Acon 2019, it very easily would have avoided a lot of the backlash this event got hit with. Again, yes, it wouldn't be a single game Acon, so there'd still be people crying about that, but cry as we may, we're most likely never going to get another one of those anytime soon, at least not officially by Roblox. But seriously though, let's think about Acon 2019. That event featured a hub game with portals to take you to other games to find eggs in. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Almost like it's quite literally how Roblox runs events nowadays, the only difference is being each game gave you a prize and there was no track system. But also, the hub had its own self-contained story, prizes exclusive to the hub that didn't require playing any games to collect, fun, unique puzzles and obbies with actual accessory rewards for completing them, and a full-on boss fight that all could be enjoyed without the entire event mostly relying on the games that got invited to provide any of that missing gameplay and enjoyment. Except the hatch made like 90% of the games just hide an egg somewhere you can find in a minute, but really, 2019's egg hunt is what I wish hubs could have continued to be more like nowadays, and the hatch seriously feels like a cry for help with how much it's actually trying to be something of its own, yet still very clearly being held back. Like, just because we need to put a spotlight on all the separate games and their developers and not have a single game take everyone's attention away from others, doesn't mean the hub has to be stripped of any personality of its own and having it serve as nothing but a pretty showcase world with a few small highlights that you only come back to just to immediately leave again and go to another game. It should be able to exist as its own standalone game that can be enjoyed even after the event is complete and not just become a husk of what it formerly was. Again, this event's hub does come pretty close to being something more, but still, the event is over, and I doubt there's going to be too many people coming back years later to do nothing but walk around and admire the islands. They'd probably just play something like Yoke Tales instead. So basically what I'm saying is, the recipe for a perfectly acceptable egg hunt was sitting right there. Sure, it most likely wouldn't have had a story and anything else too crazy, because I seriously doubt they'd be given the time to do all that. But instead of just taking the safe route directly to the city with less issues to worry about, they chose to drive in the complete opposite direction and head into the dark forest for a change, getting lost somewhere halfway through, and somehow nobody understands how this happens or why it keeps happening. Now, I don't know what any of that meant, but honestly, I'm not exactly expecting Roblox to make something like 2019's Egg Hunt again, plus handing out over 50 prizes in one event and all that. But if the hatch just had around the usual 50 or so hand-picked games from Roblox that we've come to expect at this point, and with like 5 not randomized egg shards for each element to collect, we really could have avoided a lot of problems here. One of the biggest things they could have avoided was them unknowingly inviting horrible people and their games into the event by having zero moderation for who got invited because of their desperation to make this the quote-unquote biggest egg hunt of all time. But anyway, I really don't understand why they didn't do what they did with Metaverse Champions and have people submit an application to have their games featured in the event. I get that you need multiple people going through thousands upon thousands of applications to see which games are acceptable, but if you're going to cheap out and just rely on some algorithm to pick from the top most popular games, then just don't bother getting so many games. Because clearly you couldn't handle doing that, and in turn you created one of the biggest shows I've ever seen on this platform, and no matter how much you tried to save face, it left a huge stain on the event's reputation that would never go away, unfortunately making the hub game the most disliked event game of all time. And yet over 250,000 people still went and collected every single egg, and over 50,000 people completed every single quest in the hub. Sure seems like people really like eggs, huh? A shame there weren't that many. But speaking of the hub, another problem they could have avoided is people's negative first impressions on the event once it actually came out, because one big thing that happened occasionally in the hub were egg drops. The egg drops made it to where you could get a bunch of extra eggs inside the hub, letting you skip out on some of the horrible, copy-pasted, brain-rotted, garbage games, and somehow almost making the event a single-game egg hunt, and honestly making the whole experience leagues better. But they only started doing egg drops on the second day, so myself and definitely many others wasted a lot of time and effort collecting eggs in games on the first day, only to find out we could collect a bunch of eggs in the hub way easier later on. Like genuinely, if you were lucky enough, you could quite literally get every single egg without touching a single game. The only problem is the eggs appeared to be server-sided, so if any eggs spawned, they were there at that same location for everybody and could be stolen. Plus, the eggs spawn in the same set locations, so people would just stand on top of those locations and go AFK. Thankfully, there was a cap on how many eggs of each element you could get from the drop, so that did kind of make AFK grinding less of an issue. But if private servers actually worked like you'd expect them to, and you could teleport to the other islands while staying in that private server, you wouldn't need to worry about anybody stealing anything. Even with the egg drops though, I really did not like the RNG aspect of finding the eggs. Something like this only worked in the way older egg hunts because you could collect every egg in one game and you didn't need to constantly hop around between hundreds of games trying to get the eggs you need. And more than half of the time in those games, the teleport UI simply wouldn't pop up, or it would pop up, but the game wouldn't allow you to teleport to another game, or it would pop up, but with a game you've already completed. So you have to keep going back and forth to the hub, teleporting to the portal you need to enter, make your way over to that portal because they don't just put you right in front of it, and then go back to playing the games and trying to get these eggs because you can only get them to spawn if you join the games through the hub. And like, it's already annoying enough how events nowadays have you complete multiple games just to get one prize in a specific order and you can't choose what you want to work for, though this event is thankfully different in that regard and you can just pick whichever element you want to start with. But in this event, thanks to all the RNG, you have the ability to get duplicate rewards from the games, making it even more tedious and frustrating trying to get the actual prizes that you're wanting. Now sure, you can use those duplicate eggs of yours and fuse them together to get higher rarity eggs you don't have, and preferably do that during Merge Mania, which should have just been the default numbers to be honest. But of course, fusion is also randomized, so if you fuse 7 common eggs to try and get a primal egg you're missing, but you get a duplicate, now you gotta get another 7 common eggs to attempt the fusion again, or just hope that maybe you'll get that missing egg you need in the process of trying to get more common ones to use for fusion. And there's a very high chance that you will get that missing primal or mythic because common eggs, ironically, are the most annoying eggs to get as there is no other way to naturally collect them yourself other than hunting. Sure, you could trade for them, but trading really shouldn't be something you feel forced into doing just so you can complete an event. Well, until this thing came out. I think as there was a fusion mechanic, there also should have been some kind of deconstruction mechanic where, say you had a ton of duplicate primals and mythics, which you definitely did, you can take those and downgrade them into random lesser tier eggs of the same element. This would have made collecting all the eggs so much less of a chore and would have made the mythic eggs especially feel more useful, as once you start getting duplicate mythics, you can't do anything with them but trade them. But let's actually talk about the hub itself now, and I feel like I say this with almost every new event, but this is the best hub yet, despite many of my complaints. Maybe it's just me, but it honestly captures a little bit of that magical vibe that the old egg hunts had, and this is exactly what I was saying with this event being such a big example of wasted potential. Like please, for the love of God, just let Twin Atlas cook for more than a couple months on something. Like imagine what this event could have been with the level of quality the hub had already. If they were just given more time and creative freedom, we could have had a truly special experience here, but even then, what we still got is pretty great and easily the best part of the whole event. If there's one thing I wish we could have seen in the hub, and this is quite literally just a wish, not much of a complaint, because I'm not sure if this could even get done on time, but it would have been cool to have a more natural traveling system. I would have loved to hop in a boat and actually traverse the ocean, discovering these new lands off in the distance, not knowing where you'll end up next. Instead, though, we just got a map showing you where everything is with zero mystery, and you click on an island spawn to be suddenly teleported there, and actually discovering the biomes doesn't really feel all that special, as it's very obvious where you have to go, and there's very little exploration to get to them. Now, on the topic of these biomes, get prepared, for I'm about to complain about something nobody cares about, and I shouldn't care about either, but here I am. That complaint being that I kinda wish a couple of the elements actually felt like they're elements. The dark element especially is just the same exact thing as the water element, but darker. And yes, I know the abyss of the ocean makes sense as being dark, but again, we already had water, and it doesn't really do too much differently from that. Plus, you literally have this element right next to the connection biome, which is like a community fair zone. And you know what would fit in perfectly there? A haunted house attraction. Who cares if we're in the summer? This event has us walking on clouds, traveling through Tesla coils and crystals that control time. Why not just throw a haunted house attraction in the midst of all that? And what about the Egglodon tail? Well, just make that the water element prize instead and have the aquarium replace the tiny egg nobody wants. Then there's the time element, which just feels like everything the light element could have been, with bright, colorful crystals lighting up a cave system and the prize being a halo. Meanwhile, the light element is just a desert beach with some glass here and there. Not a bad interpretation of light, plus it is still a very pretty biome like the rest, and frankly it kinda makes sense if you really think about it. But considering the time biome is next to the energy biome, I think having it be replaced with some kind of time factory filled with tons of moving cogs and gears would be a good alternate fit for the element. Then the light biome could just take over the time biome, and honestly, maybe the whole dark connection and light island could turn into some kind of western theme park attraction akin to Knott's Berry Farm or something. Connection could become the main street town where everybody hangs out and connects, then dark turns into an abandoned ghost town or maybe a graveyard, and light becomes the mines filled with all those bright crystals. But if we do just go ahead and ignore the elements and look at the biomes as simply cool environments, well, they're cool environments, and it's not like the theming is a detriment to their quality. I just wish the ideas could have been executed differently. And as we were kind of discussing some of the prizes there, let's talk about those next. For the most part, the normal prizes in this event are actually pretty dang good. I'm a big fan of these specifically, including their paid variants. I do personally think that the egg theming is a bit forced in some of the prizes, like the deviled egg horns and the frittata boombox, for example, though it is a bit hypocritical coming from me considering I've made items like that myself. But some prizes also make use of the egg theming in a more subtle way that actually looks quite nice. Ironically, like the prizes I said were my favorites. Now, if only we had actual egg designs that these prizes hatch from, then maybe they wouldn't have had to force the egg theming onto everything because we'd have already gotten eggs. But honestly, the only main prize I have a real gripe with is the Earth prize, which just gives you a belt with little knickknacks on it. I do like the Dino Pal though, just never been a fan of layered clothing like most people, and I think this item could have worked better as a backpack instead. And it'd basically still execute the same concept as a belt, but make it more universally wearable across all body types without the stretching and warping that comes from layered clothing. Well, except for body scaling warping, because we can't scale accessories by specific axes, but whatever. Now what about the straps of the backpack, you may be asking? Well, just don't add straps. You don't need them. Unless you got some creative idea to do with them, just make the backpack itself like you did with the aquarium. If people really cared, I'm sure they'd go and make their own straps as UGC like they're doing with the Egglodon and making full shark sets for that. But moving on to the paid track prizes, they sure are a weird batch this time around. Honestly, maybe a bit too weird. I'm not sure why the theming for the paid items is just crazy, trippy neon colors, except the halo for some reason, and all the models look like they're melting in the goop. It's a very weird look, but honestly, I don't hate it. I kinda like it. But I do have to say a good chunk of the free items look better as they look more, standard. But again, I do still think it's a neat idea worth exploring more with a bit more fine-tuning, especially with the color schemes, as some of them just kinda do too much. Also, I'm quite shocked there wasn't like a single special prize. Like the usual stuff we see based off of old popular classic items like the TV head or antlers for a recent example. These kinds of prizes are very popular and a big reason as to why people even play these recent events, so the fact we didn't get anything like that is very surprising. And yes, I know this is the Sparkle Time egg films, but I'm talking about prizes here. Like, are we seriously considering eggs as a special item now on the same level as something like a Valkyrie? Is that why there's barely any genuine eggs as prizes? Because that's going to be really upsetting if true, because the only reason these things could even be considered special nowadays is because Roblox forced them to be. They're not some kind of crazy limited that's worth anything, and you won't lose any significant amount of money by creating more of them. I mean, each egg hunt back then would give us like 30 to 50 eggs every year for free. We're acting like Roblox lives in the real world over here, where the price of eggs just keeps on rising in the country, suddenly making them a luxury product that you only buy to splurge every once in a while, and nobody seems to be doing anything to help with that and only making matters worse. But speaking of the eggs we did get, well, there's something, I guess. At least the ones you collect throughout the games. The rest of them are actually good, normal egg designs and are worn over your head like you'd expect them to be. There's also the launcher shelmets too. I quite like those, especially how you can combine them. But back to these things, they look like they were made in less than a minute each. You can make an argument that they were trying to design them like the older classic eggs, but I sincerely doubt that was the intention, and even many of those look better than this, and some had unique models too, and we're talking over a decade ago here. These just feel like extremely last-minute additions to the prize pool that were intended to be purely left in-game, but they needed to help satiate the people's hunger for more eggs, so they just said, screw it, why not? And I really don't understand why half of the eggs are black with a random texture thrown on top. It really would have helped make each egg feel more like its own if they just fully covered the eggs in those textures and not like half of it. And in the case of the dark egg, it's quite literally just the color black. Not even a little purple hue to it or some spooky eyes peeking through or literally anything at all. Just the color black. Like, the least they could have done with these is made them actually cover your head like eggs normally do. You know, like some of the other eggs that are featured in this same event, instead of just randomly floating around your avatar all tiny. I still dislike the designs personally, but at least they'd look a little less like placeholder assets that somehow never got finalized. And it really wouldn't be hard at all to update their positioning to go over the head, but I doubt Roblox will ever do that. Also, even if you wanted to wear all of them like some kind of egg or a thing, they're all separate accessories, so if you wear them all, you can't wear anything else. But really, I was so disappointed with these eggs, I went on my way to make eggs for each and every element myself. And man, this is a big waste of money right here, but I had fun doing it, and I'm going to shamelessly promote them because I want to. Also, it's rumored that the eggs were using AI-generated textures along with other parts of the event, which I can't exactly confirm, and as nothing has been officially stated, though I doubt there ever will be anything said. But I mean, have you seen the Infernal Deathwalker? Look at this thing. They expected people to pay over $200 for this, and it's just a poorly made retexture of the original Deathwalker with a lack of particle effects, replaced with eggs and invisible legs. Like, it really wouldn't surprise me if they used AI for some parts of this event, and it really does look like that sometimes, especially with the main promotional render, which they could have just mashed parts of the lobby together and look a million times better, but whatever. If I were to give the benefit of the doubt with some of this stuff, the only thing I can possibly think of is just the usual time crunch thing. They just ran out of time and couldn't do everything they wanted. And maybe something like the floating eggs was a last-minute idea where they couldn't come up with full designs on time, so we were just left with what we got. Although they still could have had them cover the head at least, but oh well. But don't worry, there's still more eggs to complain about, like the Collector's Basket of Glory, which I will not be complaining about its design or anything because I actually like it, but nothing really happens when you get all the eggs to unlock it. You just get the basket immediately after like every other prize, but even the standard elemental eggs all had uniquely animated cutscenes that would play when you collect them, so was this just another time constraint thing? Who knows. But then there's the super eggs, and just like the elemental ones, they would hatch into other prizes. The difference is, you didn't get to keep the eggs, and unlike the elemental ones, they had actual designs. So someone had to come up with these, model and texture them, and then they only get used in the game. Gee, that sounds familiar. And also, 2 of the 3 super eggs just hatched into other eggs. Like, why even have them hatch in the first place then? You could have saved time on not coming up with separate designs for these hatched items, both of which are horribly positioned on the avatar. I mean, the fedora thing is kinda okay at least. No idea why it's rotated like that, but nothing accessory adjustment can't fix because Roblox can't fix it themselves. But hey, guess what? There's actually a 4th super egg. One that we were only introduced to halfway into the event and suddenly being told to complete every single quest in the hub to collect it, making me question if this was even initially planned to be a prize or not. But either way, tons of people, including myself, were frantically trying to complete their leftover quests because nobody thought any of that mattered, and now suddenly we needed a ton of duplicate eggs that we didn't have to fuse and trade for quests. And the best part is, this super egg, unlike every other egg, didn't hatch, so you actually get to keep the egg. So thank you, but also why? Why is this the only super egg that doesn't hatch? I'm not complaining about its design. I like the egg, it's one of my favorites, but why did we have to miss out on the other ones? I could see that maybe they weren't optimized for UGC, but honestly, I'd expect this kind of stuff to be made under UGC limits anyways, just in case, because of situations like this. You could have had a few extra eggs for people to collect, because, believe it or not, people do actually want eggs that go over your head and not only whatever comes out of them. Even if we may not wear the eggs, people love these dumb oblong objects, and it's incredibly disappointing seeing some designs get shafted like this. It's really a shame. After the Hunt Mega Edition, I was genuinely hopeful about the future events, and honestly, maybe I'm just naive, but I still kind of am hopeful, though this has definitely lowered my expectations by quite a lot again. It really felt like they were actually trying to work on things, making events better, and listening to the community more, and even with this event, it felt like they were trying. I mean, for crying out loud, they technically did bring back egg hunts with this, but they just couldn't help themselves and once again had to try to fix something that was never broken and make something nobody asked for. And yet, regardless of everything I've said in this video, I sincerely hope that Roblox looks at this event as less of a complete and utter failure and more of a lesson to learn. There's a lot of really cool ideas here, and I would love to see some aspects of this event get explored further with another chance, maybe someday next year. But the main thing I'm hoping is they don't abandon egg hunts again just because this event was met with so much negativity and criticism, and so they'll tell themselves that nobody wants egg hunts, which is just simply not true. One big reason why we complain about events like this and get really upset over them is precisely because we love egg hunts and events as a whole, and we want to see them be better. A lot of the problems people had with this event were easily avoidable, and I'd be seriously shocked if they make the same mistakes again, but Roblox has shocked me many times before. Either way, the community wants egg hunts and more things like them. Even after this event, I'm sure people will agree. If anything, they'll want them even more now. And if you really want to make things right and have an event that'll bring everyone together and be happy, just look at 15, the people behind one of the greatest events of all time, the Great Yoke Tales. They're taking matters into their own hands and making a follow-up to that very event themselves, along with the help of Geek Out and Studio Koi Koi. And maybe I'm sounding like a pretentious asshole right now who knows nothing that he's talking about, and you'd be right, but you've worked with 15 before, and I'm sure you can work with them again and make something incredible. All you have to do really is let them give away eggs without having to spend millions of real dollars on millions of stock for each egg because of your ridiculous UGC limited system that makes it nearly impossible for people to run these big community events despite how much you claim to want to see the community do them more often. If you want to try to improve your image, if you really want to act like you listen to your community, then listen to them when they're screaming at you at the top of their lungs instead of ignoring it like you always do. You've got a golden ticket staring right at you, so will you take it or not?